Before we dive in, remember, if this story makes your heart race, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and let us know if you'd ever dare to open that door. Because tonight's case, it's one no one in Hollow Creek will ever forget. The story begins on a cold October morning in 2017, when Sarah Whitman, a 32-year-old nurse from Portland, arrived at a house she didn't know she owned. Her late uncle, a reclusive contractor named Henry Whitman, had left her everything: a 2-story property off Hollow Creek Road, a quiet stretch of countryside that hadn't seen new residents in years. The place looked like time had stopped in 1979. Peeling wallpaper, rusted fixtures, and the smell of damp wood. But what drew her attention most wasn't the decay. It was a single door to the upstairs hallway, sealed with old boards and metal brackets. Etched into the top frame, faint but visible, were the words, "Do not enter." Sarah asked a local handyman to remove the boards, but he refused, saying, "Miss Whitman, folks round here know not to mess with that room. Your uncle made sure of it." He told her stories, whispers of late-night construction noises, screams that locals brushed off as coyotes, and one chilling rumor that Henry's wife, Margaret, had vanished in that house in 1989, and no one ever saw her again. When Sarah went to the town's archives, there was no missing person record under the name Margaret Whitman. No photos, no obituary, just a single line in a 1990 property file. Occupant relocated, record closed. But no forwarding address. The more Sarah dug, the stranger it got. Bank statements showed regular withdrawals from Henry's account for repairs long after he stopped taking construction work. Neighbors said he fired anyone who came near the upper floor. Even electricians were told to skip that hallway. Then came the night of the storm. The wind tore at the old structure, shaking loose the boards from the forbidden door. Sarah, flashlight in hand, stood before the entrance her uncle had spent 3 decades keeping hidden. Her hands trembled as she turned the rusted knob. Inside, the air was still, heavy, as though trapped for years. The walls were lined with faded floral wallpaper, identical to the rest of the house, except here it was clean, untouched by dust. On the far side of the room sat a rocking chair facing the window. A thick layer of dust covered everything except the chair, which looked recently used. She moved closer, her phone camera light trembling across the floorboards. That's when she saw them. Small scratch marks near the baseboard, as if someone had clawed their way toward the door. Her flashlight flickered, landing on a cracked picture frame half buried under debris. Inside was a photograph. Her uncle, smiling, with a woman whose face had been scratched out completely. Then the floor creaked behind her. Sarah froze, but no one else was in the house. She turned back toward the door and saw something new, a dark stain spreading from beneath the rocking chair. Her breath caught as she reached down with the flashlight. The beam revealed a seam in the wooden floor, a small metal ring built into one plank. A hatch. Her heart pounded as she crouched to lift it. Thunder cracked outside and the power cut out. The camera in her phone caught only a flash of her face, pale and terrified, before the screen went black. The next morning, her car was still parked out front. The lights were still off. But the door, the one no one was allowed to enter, now hung wide open. When detectives from the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office arrived at the Hollow Creek property, the front door was unlocked. Inside, the house looked like it had been frozen mid-moment. Sarah's purse on the kitchen counter, her phone lying dead on the floor near the staircase, and muddy footprints that led directly toward the upstairs hallway. The prints stopped at the open door. The air inside the sealed room was heavier than anywhere else in the house. Investigators noted a thick chemical smell, faintly metallic. The rocking chair was still there, still gently swaying from the draft through a broken window. But what drew everyone's attention was the open hatch in the floor, a square cutout revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Officer Darren Miles, first on scene, described it later as the kind of dark that feels alive. The staircase led down to a concrete basement no one knew existed. There were no plans, no blueprints, no signs the space had ever been legally built. Yet someone had lived there. The basement was divided into 2 rooms. The first looked like a workshop, old tools, jars of nails, and a workbench covered with dust and cobwebs. The second room was worse. Against one wall stood a rusted iron bed frame. Its mattress rotted away to the springs. A chain hung loosely from one corner, and in the far corner, sealed inside an old storage trunk, was a collection of women's belongings. Hairbrushes, dresses, and photographs, all the same woman, the one whose face had been scratched out in the picture upstairs. Each photo told a story of slow erasure. The first few showed her smiling, alive. The later ones, just her silhouette, standing at windows, head turned away. And in the last one, dated 1989, she wasn't there at all. Detectives pulled records from the town archives again. That year, a neighbor had filed a noise complaint. Screaming and hammering sounds late into the night. The report had been marked unfounded and closed. But the responding officer, Henry Whitman himself, before his retirement. Forensics found traces of blood beneath the floorboards. Old but human. DNA results were pending, but the timeline matched Margaret's disappearance exactly. What puzzled investigators most was that the hatch appeared to have been sealed shut for years, yet Sarah somehow managed to open it. 2 days later, Sarah's phone was recovered from the hallway. The last video she recorded was only 11 seconds long. It showed the hatch door creaking open, a flashlight beam cutting into black, and then a faint voice, a whisper, a woman's voice saying, "Don't let him out." Audio specialists enhanced the clip and confirmed what no one wanted to believe. There was movement, breathing, on that recording. A statewide search began for Sarah Whitman, but there were no leads. The house was placed under police watch, sealed with crime scene tape. Still, officers reported strange details in their logs. Unlocked doors that had been secured the night before. Furniture moved slightly out of place. The rocking chair sometimes found turned toward the wall. 3 weeks later, a maintenance worker assigned to winterize the property went missing. His truck was found half a mile down the road. Keys in the ignition. Door open. When officers re-entered the house, they noticed something chilling in the upstairs hallway. Something that hadn't been there before. A fresh set of boards nailed across the forbidden door. And this time, someone had written across them in thick black paint, "Do not open. She's still inside." 2 months had passed since Sarah Whitman vanished. The Hollow Creek property had been sealed off entirely, tagged as a structurally unsafe crime scene. Yet rumors spread. Lights flickering in the windows at night, faint voices heard from the woods. Police dismissed it all as local hysteria. But then the lab results came back. The blood found beneath the floorboard belonged to 2 people, Margaret Whitman and Sarah Whitman. Investigators were baffled. Margaret was presumed dead 30 years ago. How could her DNA appear fresh in a sample dated only weeks old? Detective Miles, the lead investigator, decided to re-examine everything from beginning. Digging through Henry Whitman's old storage unit, he found dozens of VHS tapes, all labeled inspection logs. Each tape contained footage of the same basement room, filmed from a fixed corner camera. Most showed nothing but an empty bed frame. But on the final tape, recorded in 2015, a figure appeared, a woman with long, dark hair, pacing slowly in front of the lens. She looked directly into the camera and whispered something before the tape cut to static. Lip readers later determined her words. "You can't bury what's still alive." When detectives returned to the house to confirm the layout, they discovered something Henry had hidden too well. Another false wall behind the basement's foundation. When they broke through, the stench of rot filled the air. Inside was a small, windowless corridor ending in a steel door bolted shut from the outside. They pried it open. What they found made even seasoned investigators freeze. A narrow room, lined with shelves of preserved food, candles, and a cot. On the cot lay a woman's skeletal remains, wrapped in a faded floral dress. Dental records confirmed what everyone suspected, Margaret Whitman. But here's where the case turned dark. Fingerprints found on the inside of the door belonged to Sarah Whitman. The theory that emerged chilled everyone. Henry hadn't killed his wife. He'd hidden her, locked her away, perhaps for mental illness, perhaps to conceal something darker. But after his death, when Sarah entered that room, someone pulled her in. The basement walls contained a second hatch, leading to that hidden corridor. She'd gone searching, and it had sealed behind her. The coroner estimated the second set of prints and smudges were fresh, made days after Sarah's disappearance. The last piece of evidence came from a local reporter, Eli Moore, who obtained the building's old blueprints. The property had been modified illegally 3 times. Each renovation sealed off more of the interior, as if Henry was building a tomb within a tomb. The Whitman house was demolished in late 2018. But before the bulldozers tore down the final structure, one of the crew members, a man named Brian Keller, refused to finish his shift. He said he heard knocking from beneath the floor 3 times, slow and deliberate. When officers checked the site afterward, they found nothing except one item lying in the dirt near where the basement once stood: Sarah's phone. It was still recording. And on that final video, just 5 seconds long, the camera faced the open earth. Then came a whisper, faint, cracked, but unmistakable. "Please don't let him out."